All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. Who are the Niners going to draft in the first round? And of course, this video is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check the link in the description. Use the promo code Krug, K-R-U-E-G, and they will match you up to your first $100. Tonight in Warriors Lakers, in Underdog, I'm going to go Klay Thompson higher than 15.5 points. D'Angelo Russell lower than 20.5 points. Draymond Green higher than 2.5 first quarter points. Andrew Wiggins higher than 13.5 points. And Brandon Pajemski higher than 2.5 first quarter points. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Warriors. Let's talk a little bit about the Niners and what they're going to do in the upcoming NFL draft. In fact, I was just reading an article today that the NFL Network gave the 49ers a D plus on their 2023 draft. And it's not really surprising. I mean, Jair Brown played a little. Jake Moody was their kicker. Latu was on IR. Darrell Luter did nothing. His biggest impact was the turnover in the Super Bowl that ricocheted off his foot. Robert Beal got very spot play. D. Winters the same. Braden Willis never hardly ever saw the field. Ronnie Bell showed some talent, but didn't really carve out a role. Jalen Graham is an enormous talent. He didn't play all year. So they got very little out of their rookie class this year. I mean, their kicker and Jair Brown. And then other than that, it was just little dribs and drabs of production from the 49ers as far as what they got out of the draft. So let's talk a little bit about the 49ers and the upcoming draft. It's an interesting year. Today is February 22nd. The NFL draft is April 25th, so we're basically 2 months away. Still to come, you got the combine in Indy, you got the on-campus and individual workouts. Who will the 49ers pick at 31? And will they make a move? Will they trade a Brandon Ayuk? Will they wind up with a higher first-round pick? That's all TBD. But who will they pick at 31 is the question. Who will they wind up drafting in the first round? And it's all at this point speculative, and nobody really has any knowledge as to who they're going to wind up selecting. Just looking at some of the mock drafts that are out there are kind of interesting. ESPN's Matt Miller says the Niners will take Arizona offensive tackle Jordan Morgan at 31. Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com says Duke's offensive tackle Graham Barton will be their selection. NFL.com's Bucky Brooks has Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell going to the Niners at 31. So everybody's got a different perspective on who's going where and who the 49ers will pick in the draft coming up on April the 25th. It's a Thursday night draft, Thursday night for the first round. And it's like everybody's got a different thought on the thing, and you never know how it's all going to shake out. It's a lot of mystery between now and then. And it's like if then you go to Mel Kiper. Kiper, of course, is one of the premier draft guys, and I have yet to check who Mel's got down for the 49ers. But a lot will change since the combine's coming up, and it's anybody's guess at this point who's going to go where and that kind of thing. Mel's got the Bears starting the draft with Caleb Williams, Washington going with Jaden Daniels, New England going with Drake May. So he's got the first three picks, all quarterbacks. And who does he have the Niners taking? Mel says the 49ers at 31, or he's got 32. He says Amarius Mims. So he says there'll be 8 offensive tackles in the mock draft that he has right now, and he's got Amarius Mims going to the Niners. He's only started 8 games in college because of injuries, and but he's got an incredible talent. If you watch this kid, 6'7", 340, long arms, could just be a dominating player. Didn't allow a single sack in 372 career pass blocking snaps at Georgia. So Amarius Mims is Mel's pick. All right, let's get into it as far as what the Niners may or may not do. Okay, I'm pretty sure that the 49ers are not going to take a quarterback, a running back, a tight end, a safety, a kicker, a punter, a center, a guard, or a long snapper. So what's left? That means they're either going to take a wide receiver, a defensive tackle, a defensive end, an offensive tackle, a cornerback, and I'll just put the linebacker out there as a wild card. I really don't think they're taking a linebacker either. To me, it's either if they trade Ayuk, they could go wide receiver. If they happen to keep Ayuk, then it's probably unlikely they go wide receiver. It's probably be a defensive tackle, an offensive tackle, or a corner. I would say defensive end, but I just don't see any defensive end that really fits their profile that they would go for at the end of the first round. So this is what I've got it down to as far as the NFL draft for the Niners. To me, there's 6 defensive tackles they may consider. Byron Murphy from Texas, Michael Hall from Ohio State, Chris Jenkins from Michigan, Rook Ororo from Clemson, great name, Tavondre Sweat from Texas, and McKinley Jackson from Texas A&M. So that's 6. So 6 defensive tackles they may consider, and we'll talk about each of them here in a second. Defensive end, as I said, there's a lot of good defensive ends later in the draft, but I don't know that there's anybody in their range there at the end of the first round that makes sense. So I don't see defensive end. I mean, maybe Darius Robinson from Missouri, but a lot of people think he's going in the 20s. So I don't have him in this exercise. If I was going to put one defensive end on the Niners' plate, I would put Darius Robinson. But he's 295 pounds. He might be more of a 3-4, 5 technique kind of a guy. He can play inside. He was the practice player of the week in Mobile during the Senior Bowl practices in front of NFL scouts. So there's a lot. He's definitely in that category of fast riser, and he may rise up past where they're at and right into the late teens or early 20s. So Darius Robinson would be the one defensive end that I could see them going for, but I don't think he'll be on the board. Then cornerback-wise, there's TJ Tampa from Iowa State, who's a big physical shutdown corner. But the Niners are pretty loaded at corner. I mean, they've got Demo Lenore, they've got Mooney Ward. I think they need a number 1 corner, and TJ Tampa would be great. But I also kind of think of him as not necessarily their highest priority. If they fell in love with the player, I mean, I love him. He's great against the run. He's super. He's got all the swagger. He's a big-time player. He's got size. He's super physical. He's a hitter. I really love TJ Tampa. But as I said, I think defensive line and offensive line and maybe wide receiver will take precedent over the cornerback spot. So who are the guys that they're looking at? So I would say 1 corner, TJ Tampa, Iowa State. 6 defensive tackles, Byron Murphy, Michael Hall from Ohio State, Chris Jenkins from Michigan, and Rook Ororo from Clemson, as well as Tavondre Sweat from Texas, McKinley Jackson from A&M. Wide receiver-wise, I think they're probably looking at one of 2 guys. Brian Thomas from LSU, who led all FBS wide receivers this year with 17 touchdowns. He is a very intriguing player. Really, really intriguing player. High school star in the state of Louisiana. As I said, he led the country in touchdowns. Very raw. And then I could see, maybe a couple offensive tackles. Amarius Mims from Georgia, 6'7", 330, wore number 65 at Georgia, 5-star high school recruit. Really raw. But, man, he's got that finisher mentality. You wonder about the durability. He's only got 8 career starts. He's 21. He's an incredible athlete. I mean, this guy's an amazing athlete at 6'7", 330. Think of the kid the Steelers drafted last year, and he's a lot like that. Really looks the part. Could wind up being the best offensive tackle in this draft. A little bit of a projection because there's only 8 career starts. The other guy is Tyler Guyton. By the way, Mims wore 65. So if you're watching Georgia film, look for big number 65. Tyler Guyton, number 60 from Oklahoma, who only played right tackle. Another inexperienced player, 6'7", 325. What I love about Guyton, he wore 60. He's number 60 at Oklahoma. He was a nasty run blocker. He was started off as a TCU Horned Frog and transferred. Not a lot of experience. Only really played the 1 year at right tackle. He was a defensive tackle in high school. I always love that when you see a guy who's a defensive tackle and then transfers over to offensive tackle. That's always a good sign. So I would say Marius Mims or Tyler Guyton at the tackle spots. Brian Thomas or maybe Xavier Legette from South Carolina at the wide receiver spots. TJ Tampa at the corner. And then one of those 6 defensive tackles. So let's go through it a little bit and talk about some of these guys. One, let's talk about Brian Thomas, the wide receiver from LSU. 6'4", 205 pounds, really came on this year. 1,200-yard season, led the FBS with 17 touchdowns. There's a ton to like here. He was a high school hoop star, led his high school team to a state title in the state of Louisiana, and he's just a great athlete. Fluid route runner. Really he's got unbelievable acceleration. I mean, really exceptional acceleration. He can make kind of midair adjustments on the ball. From that basketball background, he understands how to kind of box out and use his body to shield defenders. He's great in a run after the catch situation. He's piles up rack yards, natural run instincts. Can make the first guy miss. He's willing to block downfield. I mean, he's just everything you're looking for at 6'4", 205. Him and Malik Neighbors were fantastic this year for Jaden Daniels at LSU. Length, fluidity, speed. I'll be interested to see exactly what he runs in Indy. But he's got great route instincts, great awareness against zone. Just a dangerous wide receiver. I mean, and he's not yet what he's going to develop into. He's going to develop into a very good player. A lot of people compare him to T. Higgins. May go top 15, but he may be there at 31. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a pipe dream to think he'll be there. Very light feet, very, very agile, special player. I really love Brian Thomas, and only because sometimes wide receivers tend to fall is there a chance that he's going to be on the board. When the 49ers pick. Most likely he will not be, I would say. But there's a chance that he will be. So you always got to take that into consideration. So remember that name, Brian Thomas from LSU. And if you look at the wide receiver class, I think you've got, 11 wide receivers that may go in the first couple rounds, maybe 5 or 6 in round 1 and then 5 or 6 in round 2. And Thomas is really exciting. So to me, he's a star. I mean, he's really a star in the making. Tremendous player and really, really good. So Brian Thomas is interesting. Then there's Xavier Legette, who's about 230 pounds. Has a great ability to run away from you, run after the catch. Very, this guy owns the middle of the field. I mean, in some ways, he's made to play for the Niners because the Niner receivers run so freely across the middle of the field, and Legette does the exact same thing for the Gamecocks. So one of those 2 wide receivers could be their choice. All right, let's go to some of the defensive linemen because I think Byron Murphy's interesting. He's the number 1 defensive tackle in the draft. He could go anywhere from, 15 to 18 to, the bottom of the first round, maybe top of the second round. He's just incredibly disruptive. He had a 19.6% pass rush win rate, number 1 in the nation. This guy is it's no picnic to block Byron Murphy. I mean, this guy got 4.7 speed at 300 pounds. And as I said, 19.6 pass rush win rate, number 1 in the nation. To put that in perspective, no other defensive tackle in the country was over 17%. And this guy was at 19.6. So he's very disruptive. He's hard to block. He's not the biggest player. You're talking about 305 pounds, but the tape is good. The motor's incredible. The guy just keeps coming. I mean, he really is special. So that's a guy who you got to watch for sure. And then you look at some of those other tackles, defensive tackles. Michael Hall is a shorter guy from Ohio State, but man, just powerful and explosive. He wore 51 for the Buckeyes, and this guy was just everywhere. He made tons of plays. He's not the biggest guy, but man, I mean the pass rush, the quickness, the hand strength, the production, it's all there for Michael Hall. He's a 295-pound wrecking ball. Then there's Chris Jenkins, who was on the Bruce Feldman Freaks list, the Michigan defensive tackle, and obviously Michigan was loaded this year. This is his dad was Chris Jenkins as well, who played for the Carolina Panthers and former University of Maryland star, and his son Chris Jenkins, who played at Michigan, is just a freak of nature. Now, he was on the Feldman Freaks list because he just works out incredibly well. And I think he's going to go somewhere in the mid-20s to the mid-30s, so he might be right there on the board for the 49ers. I think they're stronger players against the run, but Jenkins has got speed and pursuit ability and movement ability that's, at 295 pounds, whatever he is, he's another guy, pass rusher, interior pass rusher. He's not as good against the run as he is against the pass, but, man, he's a tremendous athlete at 295 pounds. Then there's the Clemson kid, Rook Ororo, and, he's just a load. I mean, we're talking about 310 pounds and quick feet and just a lot to like about Ororo. I mean, it's a great name, too, but this kid is just a house. And he's raw, and he's getting nothing but better and better and better. And he's good against the run, but he also gives you some interior pass rush. He's not quite Byron Murphy or Michael Hall or Jenkins as far as a movement guy, but he's bigger than Jenkins and Hall and Murphy, and he's maybe more naturally powerful than those guys. And he's right there at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. So those four guys for sure. Byron Murphy, incredible rusher. Michael Hall, wrecking ball. Chris Jenkins, crazy athlete at 295. Rook Ororo, a very raw player from Clemson, but man, he's an absolute monster. And then there's two interior run stuffers in Tavondre Sweat, who's about 350 pounds. Now, he's not a pass rusher, though he's got some quickness, but he's just an absolute run-plugging menace. And maybe if the Niners are looking for that run-plugger in the middle, Tavondre Sweat's going to be attractive to them. He reminds me a little bit of DJ Jones, except he's bigger. And he doesn't have quite the feet of DJ Jones, but he's just so hard to move out of there. And the other guy is McKinley Jackson for Texas A&M. McKinley Jackson is 325 pounds. He's A&M has had some really good defensive linemen in recent years, Justin Matabuke, and McKinley Jackson is just he's the man inside. I mean, he's strong at the point of attack. He's 325 pounds. It's hard to uproot him out of there. He's really difficult to block. They're better interior rushers, but this guy is a force against the run. He just clogs the middle. And if you're looking for that interior, run clogger, Tavondre Sweat and McKinley Jackson are right there at the top of the list. So you got 6 defensive tackles, all right, that I think they'll consider all those guys. You got 1 corner in TJ Tampa. You got at least 2 offensive tackles. There's others, but Amarius Mims and Tyler Guyton would be my favorite as far as talent and upside and potential. And there's other guys. I mean, I like Javon Foster. I like Christian Jones. I like Ladarius Henderson. But those guys are more like round 2, round 3 guys. Amarius Mims has got, mid-first round potential. Tyler Guyton might be able to step in right away. He's a nasty run blocker. He could probably play right tackle and maybe gravitate towards replacing Trent Williams eventually. So you got 2 offensive tackles, 1 corner, 6 defensive tackles, a couple wide receivers in Xavier Legette and Brian Thomas. And then I'll throw in 2 wild cards. The 49ers don't know what's going to happen as far as Dre Greenlaw. Are they going to be able to re-sign an Azeez Al-Shaair and bring him back to the fold? We don't know at this point. I think linebacker is kind of the wild card on draft day for the Niners. And there's 2 really special linebackers that are going to be on the board when they pick, most likely, at the end of the first round. And I don't know that you could go wrong drafting a future Pro Bowl linebacker. And that's what I think both these guys are. Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M, who's just a big hitter, incredibly fast, blitzer off the edge, but he can drop and cover as well. 3-down linebacker who's just I think he's a Pro Bowler. I think he's a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker, Edgerrin Cooper. And then from North Carolina, Cedric Gray. I've been a huge fan of Cedric Gray all year. All he does is make tackles. Guy's had 100+ tackles 3 years in a row. He's one of the safest picks in this entire draft. He will not be a bust. Cedric Gray will either be a very good or great NFL linebacker. He's too productive, too fast, too consistent, too everything. I mean, the guy is just he's 235, but he runs around, he hits, he's good against the run, he's good against the pass. He was playing with his hair on fire deep into the fourth quarter of the Senior Bowl. I mean, this guy just loves to play, loves to run, loves to hit. Carolina always has a lot of guys, and sometimes their guys are hard to evaluate. But this guy is he's everything you're looking for in that second-level defender. If Dre Greenlaw, if the Niners for whatever reason move on from Dre Greenlaw and they're looking for a replacement, man, you could do so much worse than Cedric Gray from Carolina and Edgerrin Cooper from A&M. I think they're both very, very outstanding players at the next level. So there you have it. I mean, we're 2 months before draft day, and I would almost bet everything I got that one of their pick, that their pick at 31 be one of those guys. So that's Cooper, Gray, that's 2 linebackers, 6 defensive tackles, that's 8. TJ Tampa, one corner, that's 9. 2 offensive tackles, that's 11. 2 wide receivers, that's 13. So we'll hone it down as we get a little closer, and of course free agency is in March. So we'll see who the Niners sign, who they retain, what the makeup of their roster looks like, who they work out, who they talk to, who they meet with in Indy, what the workouts in Indy look like, what the rumor mill is spitting out over the next couple months. But I would say, if you made me wager, I would say one of those 13 players will be a 49er. Edgerrin Cooper, Cedric Gray, Devondre Sweat, McKinley Jackson, Byron Murphy, Michael Hall, Chris Jenkins, Rook Aroro, TJ Tampa, Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton, Brian Thomas, and Xavier Legette. Now, I always get this question. Krug, do you have a sleeper? Is there a sleeper in this draft that the Niners may grab? And there is, and I'll give him to you right here. His name's Karan Amagi, and he played at Yale. He's a really, really interesting player. He's an Ivy Leaguer, obviously, playing at Yale, which is hardly, the proving ground for NFL players. And he's hurt right now. He's dinged up. I don't think he's going to perform at the Combine. He's not going to work out in Indy. He started his career at offensive guard, and then he's played some right tackle. He's a smart kid, high-character kid. Dane Brugler has mocked him to the Niners in the second round. Grew up as a basketball player, didn't start playing football till the 8th grade. His first year at Yale was wiped out due to the COVID pandemic, but just tons of talent. 36 3/4 inch arms. I mean, that's like maybe the longest arm length I've ever heard of. This guy's really, really something. And if you watch him, there's a lot to like. There's a lot to like. This is a great tackle class. Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu from Penn State, J.C. Latham from Bama, Taliesin Fuaga, Amarius Mims at the top, and then guys like Jordan Morgan, Tyler Guyton, Graham Barton, Kingsley Sumatea, Patrick Paul. They're all in the mix. But this kid, Amagi, is really something. He started every game for Yale at right guard in 21. And then moved to left tackle, locked down the blind side in 22, and then played left tackle again in 2023. And then in October, his season came to an end. He suffered a torn quad, and his season was over. And, he was incredibly dominant in the Ivy League. You would expect him to be. First team All Ivy League selection in 2022. He never allowed a sack at tackle. He's basically, if you watched his film, you could see. He was a tier above all the people he went against. He's got great nimble feet, really, really great first step explosive movement, and he's just a huge guy. He's got ridiculous length, and he's got burst, and this is a guy that you know, if the Niners want to go defensive line in the first round or corner or linebacker and they don't want to go offensive tackle in the first round, you could maybe go offensive tackle with this kid in the second round. And he can move defenders out of the hole. He's got explosive leg drive, great torque. He's got good balance, really good hip flexibility. He's got good foot speed. You're really looking at a guy who, he's really, he can recognize what defenses are doing as far as delayed blitzes. He's just a true mauler in the run game. So, I mean, there's just a lot to like there. Now, there's also developmental work. I mean, he's takes some bad steps, and he's still growing, believe it or not. And he's got to work a little bit on his hand placement. And, his offensive line, defensive line, very technique-rich positions. This guy's a little bit of a waist bender. He doesn't always bend at the knees. He kind of bends at the waist. You don't like to see that. He could definitely improve his strength. He missed most of this year with the quad injury that required surgery. So you got to get your doctors. I mean, the medicals at the combine are going to be big. And this guy, has been prone to some false starts. I mean, he's raw. But we're talking about 6'5", 330, 30, almost 37-inch arms, crazy power profile, high-level athlete, great, very explosive, great, flexibility, great range to pull and move, smart as hell, will fight you, played at a lower level, but he's got elite everything, athleticism and power and physicality. And he's got experience at guard. So he's not just a tackle. He can play some guard. He's going to probably need Chris Forster to develop him. But, man, you could take this guy in 2 years from now when Trent Williams is hanging it up. You could have a ready-made road grader who's just a dominating blindside protector on the backside. So just remember him, the Yale kid, Karan. His first name is Karan Amagi. Amagaji, I believe, is the pronunciation. So you got to check him out. He's worth watching on film for sure. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video. Thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.